Two men, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses, 8 kids. Get ready to enter the Thrivetime Show.
We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Thrive Nation, there are very few legal ways to get rich quick. Your chance of finding one of those opportunities is very, very slim, or about twice the odds of getting hurt in a commercial plane crash twice. Now, the bright side is that getting rich slowly is actually fun and will yield you thousands of adventures in the process. And on today's show, we are interviewing a guy by the name of Jerry Vass, who wrote a book called Soft Selling in a Hard World, where he explains in great detail that there are only 3 ways to really make exceptional money as an entrepreneur. One, you got to work at a place where no one else wants to be. I had a buddy of mine years ago that was an Alaskan fisherman, fishing in Alaska. Sounds like a lot of fun. No, it's not. I had one of our employees years ago that worked on an oil rig out there in the Gulf of Mexico. Rumor has it we have a couple of podcast subscribers located in the Gulf of Mexico who listen to each and every show. And I know you guys probably don't enjoy the time away from your family and living on a floating city that smells like oil, but you get paid well, right? The second way to get rich is you can perform work that no one else wants to do. Sales. No one seems to want to do sales. I like doing sales, but a lot of people fear sales. They're scared of sales. They just don't know how to sell. And when you can't sell, your business will just go to hell. And the third way to get rich is to do work that no one else can do. Well, Steph Curry can do that, and he's pretty awesome at it. Leonardo DiCaprio could do that, and he's pretty great at it. I mean, Oprah. I don't know how many people could do what Oprah does. Serena Williams, Venus Williams. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are LeBron James that can do things that I frankly can't do, and that's why I like to pay people with that kind of skill. I like to watch them. I like to vote with my dollars and say, yeah, Brad Pitt, you're a better actor than me. Mr. Tom Hanks, you're better than me. I like to pay to watch your movie. So, again, the 3 ways to get rich are you can work at a place where no one else wants to be, you could do work that no one else wants to do, or you could perform work nobody else can do. And it's really the last 2 conditions for making extraordinary money that we're going to explore on today's show. You see, learning to sell softly isn't only about money, it's about enjoying the process of sales. This little manual called Soft Selling in a Hard World is all about reality. It's about a survival guide for the strange mastering of persuasion. It's a kind of a strange road to learning how to master persuasion. It shows you the mechanics. Soft Selling in a Hard World teaches you the mechanics needed to sell well. That's what the book is about. The book is designed to teach you the specific tactics, not the strategy, to walk you through the step-by-step process that you need to take. And the whole system, what's great about it is you can learn the whole system and implement the system and write all the scripts and utilize the system in a way where other people can do what you can do. You can make yourself repeatable and duplicatable. So you can create not just a job, but you can create a thriving business that can create both time freedom and financial freedom for you. My friend, selling is the highest paid profession in the world. I mean, our leaders in politics, business, and research, and the arts, they're all great salespeople. And just a lot of times you don't realize that they're selling. I mean, you see presidential candidates, heads of companies. I mean, Steve Jobs was legendary for his annual presentations. Warren Buffett. You don't think of Joel Osteen as selling, but he's trying to convince you to become a Christian. He's trying to share with you the love of Christ. You might not think of Oprah as a salesperson, but she's trying to convince you to tune in and watch the show again. You might not think about President Obama as a salesperson, but he's trying to get you to vote for him. He was trying to get you to vote for his ideology. So if you've ever struggled to sell, if you've ever struggled to sell well, this show is for you. Or if you're very good at sales, but you've ever struggled to teach a team of people with no experience to sell, That's where the magic is. Can you teach an army of people to sell well? If you've ever struggled with learning how to personally sell or how to teach an army of people to sell, you are going to absolutely love today's show as I interview a great man, a wonderful friend of the show, Jerry Vass. Jerry Vass, at the age of 83, is now retired, enjoying the high life there, living in Florida, enjoying his home in Jacksonville and the fruits of his efforts. But he decided to come on to the show. My friend Jerry Vass decided to come on to the show and to share with us the answers to so many questions that I had as a result of reading his book, Soft Selling in a Hard World. If you don't have the book, get it today. Get out a pen and pad. You got to get out a piece of paper. This is a show where you got to take a lot of notes. And I would encourage you to get Soft Selling in a Hard World today. Without any further ado, my exclusive interview with Jerry Vass. Also, just a quick disclaimer. I apologize for the audio quality of this audio-only interview, but his phone was kind of cutting out a little bit. We tried to edit it the best that we could. And so without any further ado, here's Jerry Vass. All right, Thrive Nation, welcome back to another great conversation. And on the Thrivetime show today, Chup, I could not be more excited to have the man that I would consider the godfather of systemic sales. You see, back in the day, Eric, I started working in the world of commercial real estate.
Yep.
One of my clients wanted to go into commercial real estate. And before we exited Fears and Clark, we actually had the commercial real estate listings for 1/3 of downtown Tulsa.
That's roughly 33%.
And do you know what sales book we use to build our scripts, our systems, our processes, the entire system that we used at Fears and Clark when representing Can Bar Properties and roughly 1/3 of downtown Tulsa? Do you know what book we read, Chup?
What book was it, Clay?
Soft Selling in a Hard World by you, Mr. Vass. How are you, sir?
I'm perfect. Thank you very much. And I want to tell you, I'm flattered by all of this. I'm not used to doing this anymore because I've been out of the training business for 10 years because I got old and my mind took a vacation. So but we'll do the best we can.
Well, I appreciate you, and you are much sharper than I am. I aspire to be half as sharp as you think you once were. I mean, you are. Your book is amazing. The book "Soft Selling in a Hard World," and in that book, Jerry, you wrote, if you aren't selling up to your potential, you probably don't understand that selling is a game. Most people don't. Those who do make 85% of the money become executives or run their own successful businesses. This book is about fulfilling your potential without resorting to motivational and inspirational beliefs. As in sports, you find that certain mechanical moves need to be mastered before your inspiration or genius can shine. Like a dog can be inspired to chase a car, but doesn't know what to do with the car once it's caught it. This knowledge is about what you do when you catch the car. That thin slice of face-to-face time when persuasion really occurs. Jerry, I'd love for you to expound on this, and that's such a beautiful excerpt from your book. I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
Surely. Well, I use the word game in the sense of a professional sport. And just as any professional sport, one has to understand the game, develop and polish the skills needed, and have a plan for the big contest. In selling, that translates to getting your story together, getting your tools ready, and practicing your delivery. Then putting it all together under pressure in front of a prospective client. You may hear someone say, if my job doesn't work out, I can always sell. You never hear them say, if my job doesn't work out, I can always be an NFL quarterback.
Right. And I think the preparation that you teach in your book is what allowed me to be successful. Because, Jerry, when I was sitting down meeting with somebody about listing their commercial real estate, they would ask me directly, how many other listings do you have? And I would tell them we have this many listings. And they would say, what makes you different than the competition? And I had it all on a one sheet. I had all my sales presentations. I had all my testimonials, all my statistics. I had a system for it. I had incorporated all 7 of your selling moves. And it helped me be proactive so that I could lead the conversation, build rapport with the buyer, find their needs, deliver benefits supported by facts, and close deals. Jerry, in your book, Soft Selling in a Hard World, you wrote that sales is a profession identified with the worst of its practitioners. On behalf of that group, I apologize for anybody who I did a poor sales presentation on years ago. Not the best.
It happens.
Because they sell so well, the public doesn't identify those that are at the top of the cultural heap. The politicians, the movie stars, the talk show hosts, the televangelists, and the business leaders. The world doesn't view these people as salespeople, as outstanding salespeople. They're rarely caught practicing the selling trade. The best of them are so good that people simply like their quote-unquote personalities, because people easily confuse skill with personality. When you study the best, you find that they make many mechanical selling moves right. Is this due to practice or coincidence? Natural talent or learned response? Only they know for sure how much is talent and how much is learned. The results are the same. They convince, move ideas, create change, and solve problems. We love them for it, and we reward them with the best our culture offers: fame, fortune, cool clothes, and a big house. Jerry, share with us about what great selling is and what bad selling looks like.
Well, great selling is problem solving, pure and simple. You find the buyer's real problem and working with the buyer to solve it. You work together. To do that, you have to ask intelligent questions and listen intently. Bad selling is vomiting your stuff, talking, pitching about your stuff, and seeing the whole transaction only from your own point of view. Successful selling is explaining well what you do from the client's point of view. As in any activity, when someone is really good at what they do, it looks easy, even effortless. It's transparent. And whether it's running a podcast or playing tennis or skiing or selling, we all think I can do that, until we try and learn how difficult it is.
Oh, the one thing, Eric, that happened to us years ago is we were approached, Jerry, by the Scripps radio network. They produce HGTV, the Travel Channel, and they said, Clay, we'd like to have you produce a show that we're going to air in various markets throughout the United States. Now, I had heard a lot of Rush Limbaugh in my life, a lot of Glenn Beck, a lot of Tim Ferriss, a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk, a lot of the big names, and I have been a production person. I ran an entertainment company, so I've done a lot of audio production. And I realized going into it how hard it was going to be because I've been up and close to it. But I can't tell you how many people have listened to our podcast and have told me that they tried to produce a daily podcast for about 4 days in a row.
Maybe.
And then they ran out of things to think about or talk about because they weren't aware of the level of preparation needed. And so I think it's really hard when you don't know. And that's what I love about your book, Soft Selling in a Hard World. Everybody needs to own a copy of it because you break down the science of how to sit down with the prospect and build rapport. And it's very specific about what questions to ask. You break down how to listen intently. Then you explain how to find their problems, how to find their needs. Then you teach how to solve the problems, how to support it by facts. The book is so linear, and it breaks it down where I think the world looks at people who are great at sales and says, yeah, that's probably natural. It's
natural talent.
But it's not natural. It's a system. And Jerry, we work with hundreds of business owners all over this great country, and we often find that many of them seem scared of making sales calls. What would you say to somebody out there listening right now who is an entrepreneur or who wants to be, who's afraid of picking up the phone and making sales calls?
Well, I have told them often when I sit down with management, and I say, look, you have a right to be scared because poor selling skills downline are a message to your market. It's your message to the market, and it is a waste of your money, and you trash the market as you go. And no business and no person likes rejection. The real problem is that all salespeople, and I stress all, I include owners and managers here, can see the upside of every possible transaction. Quote, this could mean $10,000 to my company. And they also sense the downside, no sale, wasted time, expense, and they don't have the skills they need to control the downside and weight the transaction in their favor. most of the time they don't even know such skills exist. And they often confuse personal magnetism with selling skills and a signed contract with being liked. Neither of those is true. What is true is that buyers would buy from a donkey if he could solve their problem.
Chup, that's why I've done so well. People are buying from the donkey.
Yeah, we'll use that word. That's a good word to use.
Oh, no.
Not the other one.
Chup, come on, seriously. Only I can self-deprecate myself. That's you deprecating on me.
That's just mean, isn't it?
Now, in your mind, Jerry, why does it seem like so many business owners are scared of rejection when it comes to sales? That fear, they fear the word no so much. Why?
Because the real process is unknown to them. They are walking into a situation thinking, I have a good product, but they don't know one thing about the client personally and very little about the client's business.
So what would you say to a business owner? I see this all the time. They want to delegate their sales to an employee without actually using the script themselves first. Like they want to delegate the sales process to an employee when they personally have not used the system and or created a system. The owner wants to delegate their sales to an employee without them actually first creating and using the proven systems. What would you say?
Well, not to be cute, but I've run up against this quite often. I just say, look, you're an idiot. Because if you owned a major sports team, you wouldn't put a player on the field just because you liked him or her. You'd insist on training and practice and lots of it. Managing salespeople is one of the most difficult aspects of running a business. I mean, I've been in business since I was 17 years old. I'm now 83, so you can count it up. Partly because salespeople take their cue from management, and many managers are not themselves trained. We've often trained salespeople where the managers would not come into the room with them, and so the salespeople ended up knowing more about sales than the managers did, which caused conflicts, in sales meeting because the people are going, whoa, wait a minute, and the manager's going, this is what we're going to do. The more years involved they are with their product or service, the shallower the presentation becomes. The senior salesperson is often the worst person to teach others down the line. They're often product-oriented, make a few new calls, and sell to their old connections, so they don't like being told they don't know what they're doing. Business has changed now, and businesses that keep on selling the same way will eventually fall behind.
Jerry, in Soft Selling in a Hard World, you wrote a statement that blew my mind the first time I read it, and I just kept reading it again and again. It says, there are only 3 ways to make exceptional money. To work in a place nobody wants to be, that's one. To work in a place where nobody wants to be, that's one. If you're writing this down, Thrive Nation. To work in a place where nobody wants to be. 2, to perform work nobody else wants to do. Or 3, to do work that nobody else can do. So as we're kind of thinking about that, Chup, I DJ'd hell gigs at the Holiday Inn Select, Jerry. I was a disc jockey 7 days a week at the Holiday Inn Select for impersonators. So 1, I was doing work in a place no one wanted to do it. 2, I was doing work that nobody else wanted to do because no one else wanted to be a DJ 7 nights a week for impersonators who pretended to be Neil Diamond and Michael Jackson. And then 3, I did work that nobody else could do because who knows how to host 4 shows in a row that are exactly the same, saying exactly the same jokes and pretending like you care.
While bringing the heat.
Every single time, Jerry, people would pour in. I'd say, folks, welcome to the incredible Holiday Inn Select. You guys are in for a treat. We've got Neil Diamond in the flesh. And everyone's going, woo! And I had to tee it up every time. I was like, as Ed McMahon. I mean, so it's so true. That is such a true statement. So I ask you, Thrive Nation, how are you going to get rich? Now, you have to perform work that no one else wants to do, to perform work no one else can do, or to work at a place nobody else wants to be. Jerry, talk to us about the importance of facing the reality that these are the only 3 ways to get rich unless you're a unicorn example.
Yes, or a drug dealer.
Yeah.
or a liquor distributor or something.
I'm going to write that down. Hey.
These are financial conditions we all cope with daily. This book is about dealing with the second and third ways, doing what no one else wants to do and what no one else can do. As you have said, people are scared of selling, and many don't have the skills to close deals. Learning to sell well allows you to bravely meet both of those conditions where you both want to and can do.
Jerry, I love when you write in your book, you say, this book is about mechanics. I'll preach it. It is designed from the street up tactics, not strategy. You won't find any magic here. There is none. There's no underlying motivation or belief. Here's my favorite part. It says, it isn't about something larger than yourself. You don't have to believe in it to make it pay. You don't even have to believe in yourself. You just have to use mechanics. Jerry, I want to pile on there, Chuck, because when I was selling commercial real estate, I didn't care about commercial real estate.
Yeah.
I would say the vast majority of the business ventures that I'm involved in right now are in industries and things that I am 100% dispassionate about. But, my friend, why is great selling really just about mastering the mechanics of sales?
Well, done well, selling is a profession, and learning a profession isn't something that happens naturally or in a vacuum. It takes an awareness of errors and learning from those errors and correcting the errors, and in doing so, you eventually learn the profession. Persuasion as a profession is no different. It requires attention, troubleshooting, and practice.
Jerry, I think that it seems so simple. You almost feel like, is that it? Is that it? No, but no, listen, it's not, Thrive Nation, it's not a one-time event. It's a process.
Right.
And so, Chuck, we have our sales meetings every single week at Thrive, every Tuesday, Jerry. Because of you and your book, Jerry, you caused this problem. We train our team every single week, and in that meeting, we record the calls.
Yep.
And we play back the calls of actual sales presentations. We watch actual videos.
Yeah, and while reading the script at the same time.
And while the actual salespeople, Jerry, are in the room. So the salespeople actually get to watch themselves physically presenting on video and on audio every single week. And we do it every week. Jerry, for somebody out there that wants to do sales training like one time, why does it require ongoing training? Could you share that? Why does sales require ongoing practice?
For the same reason that football players have to practice every Saturday and several times during the week in order to stay sharp, there are only so many responses that are available to the buyer, both in role plays and in reality. And when you hear them enough times, you go, I know what to do with this. So it takes a surprise out of the transaction for the seller. And you just get better and better. And I have to say, having your sales meeting once a week and doing role plays, I did that I owned a brokerage in Telluride, Colorado for 30 years, and I role played my people every Monday morning at 7:30, much to everybody's pain, and we control 30% of the total market, two of us. And so it's one of those things where you go, when this comes to this is what you do, this is what you do. You run down, you go for the long pass, or you go for the short out, or whatever. So it's practice and all of that is a very serious and rewarding activity for the business owner.
So, Jerry, can you explain to the listeners why you believe that sales is that soft sales is a learned skill? Why do you believe that?
Well, because it doesn't come naturally to us. For 30 years, we taught a course in unnatural acts, because the stuff is just not a natural response; it is a learned response. So, for the soft sell, one has to put away the ego and let the buyer do the work. Well, believe it or not, it is very difficult for people to allow the buyer to do the work. We live in a culture that tells us we sellers are the center of the universe, and to sell well, one has to allow and encourage the buyer to be the center of his or own universe. Salespeople should talk no more than 40% of the time. The buyer should talk 60% of the time. Great salespeople are all above average listeners. When we taught people to do short list presentations in front of committees and buying groups and so on, we taught them how to give a mission statement, open with a probe, and then sit back and watch the action, rather than talk and do slide after slide and get into slide death. So we used to teach this. We did a course in civilized conversation, which is allow those people to do the work.
I love it. I love it. I totally believe in the rule of conversational generosity. Let the prospect, let the buyer talk the majority of the time. Now, Jerry, there's another knowledge bomb from your book that I highlighted and underlined multiple times. And it read, if you have a world-class idea and you want to give it away for the good of humanity, you will have to sell the concept. And if you can't sell it, you'll be stuck with your idea, poorer for your brilliance and generosity. It seems unfair, but even freebies must be delivered with a certain salesmanship or the receiver does not perceive the true value of the gift. Jerry, why do so many people push back on the idea of learning how to sell effectively and resort to saying dumb things like, this product is so good, it will sell itself?
Well, because they love this illusion. It is a cultural thing in my estimation. It is maybe 2% of the time it's true that something will sell itself. But if your stuff sells itself, then it's not really selling. It is order taking. We all love the idea of the financial miracle, winning the lottery or unexpected inheritance from a rich aunt. And we're all looking for the magic bullet, whether it's weight loss or closing deals. Those are myths, too, and they're fun. But selling is a skill. There are no shortcuts to getting good at it and no quick fixes. It may not be the fun you're looking for, but the profession is very lucrative. The highest paid people in our culture are salespeople.
I agree with that. And I think that there's many people out there that want to go into the marketplace and they want to just state, my product is the best, therefore it's going to sell itself. And Jerry, in your book, you write, puffery is hot air. Webster's dictionary defines it as flattery, publicity, exaggerated commendation, especially for promotional purposes. In selling, it is claims that are unproven as stated. Typically, puffery words and phrases are, we're number one, we're the best in our business, save big money, a lot, high profits, and the fastest, etc. Can you explain for our listeners the profound difference between attempting to sell using puffery versus attempting to sell using representation, benefits, and facts?
Well, in a downscale market, we buy puffery all the time, but I happen to be in the executive sales training business, and so we were teaching people to sell at the very highest levels, which, of course, also works at the lower levels. The less sophisticated the buyer, the more likely they are to buy puffery. But buyers view puffery as lies. They may not be intentional, but the buyers don't believe them. First, they make all salespeople sound the same. So everybody in your business then sounds the same. And when you get killed on a price negotiation, you have no defense. And second, they set up conflicts with your buyer.
I want to ask you this, Jerry. This is not about the sales process, but it's about you, the sales wizard. How long did it take you to write that book, Soft Selling in a Hard World, which is the Bible of sales? That thing is amazing. How long did it take you to read that or to write that thing? That thing is awesome.
Well, probably around 6 months. It's a funny story. We don't have time to do it here. Someday when we're sitting over drinks, I'll tell you the funny story about.
I'm coming to you tomorrow.
But it was one of those things. I wrote it as part of a software program I was developing at the time because I had my own get-rich scheme about how to build a playbook on a computer. And so we were developing that in the very early days, and that book was just part of a package of teaching people how to sell using computers. So it was really an ancillary project, to this larger idea, which the larger idea failed, but the book was residual out of that, and it's now sold about, 80,000 or so. It's been on the market for we figured out the other day, 32 years or something it's been on the market. So it's been backlisted a long time.
It's kind of one of those books there that I run into a lot of high-level salespeople that have read the book.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not a book that everybody. If you're listening to this podcast, you should own the book. But if you're working for a company and you're selling burritos and you have no curiosity about how sales works, you should read the book, but you probably won't because it would require a lot of work and thinking. But that book is awesome. Soft Selling in a Hard World. Jerry, I want to go back now to asking you some of these questions about specifically the closing move. Can you share with us what the closing move looks like to you?
Sure. Actually, the closing move is the last move of the 7 selling moves that is explored in depth in the book. And in fact, most of the course that we teach or used to teach had to do with covering the 7 selling moves. It took 3 days. So it just encompasses this entire idea of how to do persuasion from the buyer's point of view. And in selling, this move is called the close. This is the move that scares everybody to death, and it's not just you. It is where people go, my God, what do I do now? In selling lore, this is the scariest move. However, this 7th move is the simplest move at all, but only if you have set up your whole meeting from your first words to solve the buyer's problem. The actual words to close can be as simple as, well, how do you see us working together to solve this problem? Or where do you think we should go from here? Or something along those lines, and let the buyer do the work. Now, we often get a comment when we teach this that says, well, they never said yes. Well, they were never required to say yes. It was all assumed that they would say yes, and if they answered this question, where would you like to go from here? You don't need yes, no. It just doesn't come to that.
With our wedding photography company and then with real estate, people asked me, they would look up Fears and Clark online. And by the way, if you're out there, Thrive Nation, take the challenge. Type in Fears, F-E-A-R-S, Clark, and then Canbar. Maurice Canbar, there, Jerry, is the guy who invented Sky Vodka. And after selling Sky Vodka for $600 million, he purchased 1/3 of downtown Tulsa. And he asked me to list and market his properties for him. And people would ask me all the time, Clay, when you're signing all those leases, what did you say to close the deal? How'd you do it? I said, well, I'm using my Jerry Vass moves
here.
Right.
Right.
So I'm never going to say, well, do you want to go ahead and lease the space? I'd say, well, how much space do you need after you've looked at it? Do you want 12,000 square feet or 10?
I'm sorry, I stepped on your line, but that's what I was listening for.
I would say that, and then I would say, now, okay, 12 or 10. Okay, great, 12. Okay, and then when would you like to move in ideally? The 1st or the 15th? Okay, great. And we need a security deposit here. Do you want to do debit card or credit card? Okay. You want to sign right here? And then I would walk in to the office every time, and Braxton was there, and Bueno was there, and Tanya was there, and our team was there. And every time they'd go, did you get the deal? And I'd say, guys, this deal was kind of tough. And so they could only pay with a credit card. And I would just get a deal every time. I would close every deal. I'm not kidding. I went, Jerry, in 2007, when I ran my company, DJ Connection, as a result of your book, Soft Selling in a Hard World, I went the entire year. We booked 4,000 weddings. And of all the appointments we set, I only had one person say no the entire year.
Whoa.
One. Shannon and Clark.
You still remember him?
Oh, yeah. Oh, he shut me down, Jerry. He said, everyone in town's using you, so I decided to use somebody else.
Well, go ahead.
So that move works. Now, Jerry, you write in your book that trickery in closing is like trickery anywhere else. It's short-lived. What do you mean by this?
I mean, people teach, and I won't drop names, but you know who they are, who say, well, there's the puppy dog close, and there's this kind of close, and there's this reverse close, and there's, and I'm going, no, that's bullshit. I'm sorry. That is not light because it takes away from the buyer's attention. The buyer hates that kind of stuff because they know all of these tricks. And so because they know the tricks fall flat, and it just turns the seller into this shuck and jive guy. Instead of being somebody that you would want to do business with, you go, well, if he'll shuck and jive me here in this transaction, what's he hold for me down the line when we're in a serious business? So that's why trickery doesn't work very well. And if you are in low street sales, pots and pans and that sort of thing, perhaps you can get away with it. But if you're going to be a legitimate professional salesperson, don't use trickery.
I love the phrase shuck and jive. Chup, I'm going to begin using shuck and jive and shenanigans as words on the show more often.
I agree. I don't
Hold
know
me accountable. Why have I not said shuck and jive for a long time?
You're practicing shenanigans, and you need to cut it out.
Jerry has a better master of the English language than I have. That's the whole issue I have here. Now, Jerry, I want to brag on Paul Hood, who's on the show today. Paul and his company, hoodcpas.com, if you're checking it out. By the way, we're number 3 right now on the iTunes charts. No puffery there, Jerry. In the business section on the
really?
iTunes
Good
charts, we're number 3 out of 530,000 podcasts, according to the Wall Street Journal, in all categories. I'm talking comedy, sports. I'm talking about comedy, sports, business. We are number 26 as of the time of the recording of today's podcast. So Paul's been a sponsor the entire time. And Paul, over there at Hood CPAs, if somebody comes in and they meet with you and they do a consultation, you have multiple packages that the customer can choose from. Can you kind of explain, not necessarily all the specifics, but about the idea of having multiple packages and just letting the customer choose the options when you go for the close?
You bet, Clay. And one of the reasons we did that, it kind of ties in with Jerry's book, is Law of Clarity, where he says if you can't explain your product to a 10-year-old, then you don't know your product very well. You're not a very good salesman. And so what we have is we basically try to break it down into 3 decisions, and also so that it's not a decision between yes and no. It's a decision between which of the 3 do they want. And they go from a very basic, comprehensive, where we're just doing some consulting type work and meeting with them once a month, to the next style. Maybe if it's a business, we're doing accounting plus all the consulting. The third one would be if we're doing payroll and accounting and consulting. But it breaks it down to where, all right, Mr. Potential Client, which of these 3 do you want? Which best fits your needs?
We're doing textbook the soft selling close.
That's right.
Now, Chup, I want to teach Jerry a word here on this next question. Jerry, you've brought us back to shuck and jive and shenanigans.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a word.
Here it goes.
I'm a huge New England Patriots fan, and the word I would like to teach you today is wicked awesome.
Wicked
awesome. And that's one word. And if anything is great in Boston, it's wicked awesome.
It's not hyphenated. It's just
Jerry,
wicked awesome.
I would like for you to break down your wicked awesome bonus move on page 119 of Soft Selling in a Hard World. You write about this wicked awesome move called cross-selling. What is cross-selling all about, and why is it so wicked awesome important?
Well, it's wicked awesome important because many, if not most, salespeople have several things to sell. And after the buyer's first agreement, because you're going to be closing incrementally, and after the first agreement, the salesperson now has a proven performer in the buyer and must move on to the second and third sale and so on. Some businesses can't even survive without cross-sells, and successful cross-selling cuts across the cost of sales and increases profits. And you run into it very often when you buy something. You say you want an extended warranty with that, or fries with that burger. You need some add-on accessories for that car. Well, that's where the real profit comes. And so add-on sales really is the profit center for many of these businesses and a way to survival for them.
You know, Best Buy.
The cross-sell always starts with a probe, too, by the way. Always starts with a question. And so you can just continue on. I remember I was trained early on, and I was selling mutual funds in one of my many careers, and I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know a damn thing about mutual funds. I didn't know anything about that business, but I was taught how to sell it, and I went out, and I just kept selling until I ran out of things to sell. I finally had to shrug my shoulders and say, well, that's it for me. I'm done. I don't have anything else left. So cross-selling is and can be pretty high adventure, particularly on high-end stuff like high-end real estate. I'm talking to business buildings and that sort of thing, because I taught that for 30 years. And where these people are making $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million per sale, they practiced all the time. And when they practiced, it was serious, man, because there was serious money involved. And these were serious, bright, educated people. And they were wonderful to teach.
Now, this is something I want to hammer home on here, because Chup, this great selling doesn't, as Jerry has mentioned in his book and then on today's podcast, great salespeople don't even look like they're selling, Paul.
Right.
It's happening. And I'll never forget this, Jerry. I called to book a cruise with Karen Wheelock. And if you're out there and you know Karen Wheelock, say that Clay Clark is bragging on her, because she was good.
And if you are Karen Wheelock, Clay Clark is bragging on you.
Oh, you're the best, Karen Wheelock. So I went to book a cruise, and Karen says, well, great. Yeah, and I said, how much are the cruises? And Karen said to me, this is the first cruise I went on, I insisted on being the cheapest price possible. And I had a small boat, got motion sickness the entire time. So the second time I call and I said, Karen, how much do you charge? How much would it be? And she says, Clay, do you, let me ask you, what are you looking to do here? What's the big occasion? And I tell her, and she's, oh, so you're going to surprise her? Oh, really? Wow. So let me ask you this. What are some of her favorite activities? Next thing you know, she's got the probing questions going on. Next thing you know, Jerry, she booked an appointment. She got me to commit, not to buying something, but commit to the appointment within 72 hours, kind of within that window of time when I'm still interested. I met with her, and she just continued asking me, well, if you're going to be here, don't you want to at least have like a balcony, or don't you want to get this, room service, or what about tickets to that? Have you thought about a catamaran tour? And Jerry, somehow that $1,000 cruise, I feel like that $1,000 per person cruise turned out to be about $5,000 per person, but it was wicked awesome. It was really good. So the cross-sell, that is, woo. And one thing, Jerry, that you've talked about is that during your years working with thousands of salespeople, you've noticed that salespeople will instantly freeze up and seem to almost have kind of like a panic attack. I've seen it. You've seen it. It's a salesperson has almost like an anxiety, immediate panic attack. It's like their brain shuts off as soon as a buyer inserts any objections whatsoever. Why is it that most salespeople need to learn to overcome objections?
Well, quite frankly, if you can figure out what the problem is in the objection, you're about halfway to an answer just on that part without doing anything. So when you hear an objection, the first thing you have to do is figure out what the real objection is. English is a very complex language, and what you think you heard and what the buyer really is saying can be quite different. So the first move is to ask a question, something simple as, why is that? Or help me understand why you say that, or what is going on here, etc. We're now assuming salespeople have playbooks, so they will have practiced the answer to this objection. But it takes practice, and you're on the money having people practice, particularly in front of recording devices, cameras, and so on, because people cannot simply believe how bad they are until they see themselves on the camera.
So true.
Right.
It's just humiliating. And so, I watch myself on camera, and I just hang my head and cry.
Now, Jerry, you've written much about how salespeople can truly make a fortune if they understand that the profits are in solving the problems. I repeat, Chup, the profits are in solving the problems. Chuck, I'm not sure if I'm communicating. Maybe my mic is cutting out.
You say the problems
the problems are in solving problems. Chuck, you get what I'm saying?
The profits.
Let me try it in Spanish. Profits.
El profito.
El profito are in
el solving el problema.
Right. So, all right. So, can you talk to us about what you mean by that?
Sure. When we circle back to the top of our talk today, selling well is problem solving. When selling to executives, there are really 7 business problems that seem to be universal, which we discovered in learning from our students. They're outlined in detail in my other book, Soft Selling to Executives, and they pop up over and over again. They are to acquire and manage capital, acquire and manage people, find and fill markets, meet and exceed the competition, improve quality and lower costs of production, maintain sufficient and predictable cash flow, overhead, maintain control and predictable overhead. When you're selling into this stuff at the business level, life goes pretty well. I mean, it's just that because people are not going to argue with you. You say, look, we're here to help you pick one, cut your overhead, or meet or exceed the competition, or find and fill a new market, or acquire and manage your people, or your finances. So when you hit the business level for upscale clients, that's where the money is, and really selling becomes consulting at that point, where you really are genuinely bringing value, true value, to your client.
I want to make sure that the listeners get a specific example of this. Okay, so Jerry, if somebody out there listens to our podcast and they reach out to us for business coaching, here are just some of the problems that we can solve, and I'll just kind of list them out. And Paul, you can chime in if there's something I'm missing out on. But
hey, I got a quote here. It's a business guru. If you got a problem, you'll all solve it. Check out the moves. Well, my DJ revolves it.
Thank you for quoting Vanilla Ice, the early 90s rapper.
Business guru.
I did. Jerry, are you a big fan of Vanilla Ice? Were you a big fan of the early 90s rapper Vanilla Ice?
Yes,
Okay.
Nice.
There he is. So this is the thing, though. People say, what do you guys do? Well, we do all the search engine. So what's the problem we're solving? How do you get to the top of Google? So we're getting you to the top of Google. We help you make a workflow. Well, what problem does that solve? It helps you create time freedom. Paul, sales scripting. What problem does it help for you when our organization helps you with sales scripting? How does that help you, Paul?
Well, it helps by creating a duplicatable system that can be scaled, so that it's not all dependent upon the top salesperson, me.
Videography. What problem does that solve, Eric, for our listeners out there?
Yeah, we're oftentimes educating the customer on who we are, what we sell, and we're showing them happy previous clients and testimonial videos as well.
A lot of our clients can't afford a videographer.
Right.
They can't do it. So we do the videography, the photography, the web development, the sales scripting, but we have to think about it in terms of the buyer. What are the problems we're solving for you? And the problem for you, the average buyer, is you have a small business and you don't have the ability you don't have the money to hire a full-time videographer and a full-time photographer and a full-time web developer and a consultant to make it all happen. And so for $1,700 a month to month, for less money than it costs to hire a $10 per hour employee, you get all that stuff. And so that's I think, Jerry, a lot of us, we can become so experts of we can become such an expert and a guru of our industry that we can't explain it to anybody. And that's why I love the chapter of your book where you talk about the importance of positive self-talk and really sharing with yourself on an ongoing basis this positive, intentional self-talk and coaching yourself up. So when you head into the presentation, you're saying, I can do this. I've got it. I've prepared.
I already did
I know
this.
what I'm doing. Jerry, can you talk to us about the importance of being intentional about what you say to yourself as a salesperson?
Yes. Because all of us, I have never met anybody who sold who didn't have fear at some level. And, I've walked in many, many boardrooms to sell our services, and I knew exactly what I was going to do and how to control it because I had studied it and written a couple of books about it and all of that. But even then, it's pretty easy to get tense in those things if when it goes out of control. When suddenly the answer to a question ends up over in left field someplace, you're looking at it and going, "What the hell do I do now?" Right? So it's easy for us to talk ourselves out of selling when all we can see is the stress of it. Preparation, knowing exactly where you're going and where you're taking the buyer can change that. There are many more problems than problem solvers. So it's kind of incumbent on the salesperson to keep their eye on the problem. What is the problem? You continue to go, what is the problem? And if you know what the problems are when you walk in, I would open with those. I would go into the boardrooms of big firms, and my opening shot, I just take a look around the room and say, "Hey there, my name is Jerry Vass, and when your people walk in to sell your services, they don't know what they're doing, and so they have one rec right after another, often 3 recs before they get to end of the first sentence."
Right.
And they go, "Whoa," because you can prove it. There it is. And they know it. Somewhere in their heart, they know that I am telling them the truth. Let's take the accounting business. 90% of new businesses fail within 3 years. That would be my opening shot.
90% of businesses fail within 3 years. So right away, it gets the attention
Yes.
of everybody in the room, and you can prove it.
And it's provable, and it's researchable, and it's all there, and it scales down or up depending on your perspective. It scales up to that 10% is remaining, but it's like half fail within the first year, and there's some long-term ratio that goes like that. So, and more fail within the second year, but by the third year, there's only 10% left. And it's pretty easy, once you're aware of it, it's pretty easy to watch it happen in real time. And somewhere in your heart of hearts, you know it's true, okay? So when you have a reputation as a problem solver, the opportunities just naturally flow your way. It isn't effortless, but it's certainly at a greatly reduced effort. Salespeople and managers worry a lot about losing clients. I'll tell you, when you solve a client's problem, you can't get rid of them. I mean, they stick to you like glue.
This is so true. If you're out there, there's one gentleman that I met here about 2 months ago, Paul, at a conference. And he said to me, he says, this guy was in Florida, okay, in Florida. I won't give any more details. I'll just say he's in Florida. And he said, what I do is I'm a social media marketer, Paul. And I said, that's cool. So what kind of problems do you solve for your ideal and likely buyers? What kind of problems do you solve, you know? And he says, well, what I do is I generate leads. And then I said, do you? That was my question.
Yeah.
Do you?
Do you?
Is it provable?
And he said, well, yeah. I said, so it's like how does that work? He says, well, you pay up front for the first 3 months. You got to prepay for the first 3 months. And it was a huge fee, Jerry. It was like $6,000 or something. And I said, okay, and then what happens? He goes, well, then if you want to cancel, you can after like the third month, because it's only like $1,000 a month after the first 3 months, the big upfront fee. And the guy, I said, well, could you show me an example of maybe a client you've ever worked with where they get leads, maybe just one? And he's like, well, Paul, there's kind of too many to name, you know? I mean, it's got a lot of them, really. And Jerry, he's fishing around, and I was trying to help the guy. And then he pulls me aside at our workshop, and he goes, I got to be honest with you. I've never actually done this for people before. And I said, well, dude, that move doesn't work. What you should say is, hey, I'm a social media marketer. I believe in my product, and you'd be my first client, and so I'm going to do your first month for free. And then if you're happy, then I'll charge you this much per month. But you have to be direct and honest. You got to use facts. But you also have to get in front of the decision maker, or you're not going to have a conversation anyway. So the decision maker, Paul, if someone's trying to go to Hood CPAs, they go to hoodcpas.com, they listen to our podcast, and they show up at your office. The chances of getting to you, unless they have an appointment, are pretty pretty slim, probably none.
Yeah, virtually none. Yes.
Because you are a decision maker. Therefore, you've set up systems in your life and processes to make yourself unreachable. So Jerry wrote in his book here, he said, Jerry, you write, in your book, the decision maker is often as elusive as true love. Can you explain this, Jerry, why the decision makers like Paul are always so elusive?
Because they hate salespeople. Because salespeople waste their time. And our view is that you should be able to go in, make a complicated presentation, close the deal, and be gone at the executive level in 15 minutes. So that means that everything is quantified, it is provable, there it is, you have a lead, you got a story. The problem here is that salespeople spend a lot of time talking into a receptive ear, which often has no decision-making responsibility. It's because salespeople often prefer to meet someone at a lower level who's more interested in the features of what you sell, and salespeople are often intimidated by executives who are interested only in benefits. What is in this for me, for my business? That's all they're interested in. And so that would then dictate that you would walk in and say, my business is to increase your bottom line, your net profits, but 2% annually. That's what we do. Well, we can discuss that, and because we're talking the executive language, so people they don't understand that executives are not interested particularly in features. That's for the people downline, the kind of computer or the app that they're using or some relationship that they have with some. That's not what they're talking. They're talking about the wrong stuff. Once you know what your product or service does for buyers and how you impact their company, you are way less likely to be intimidated or willing to waste time with someone who can't say yes. Here's a question.
Yeah.
How are decisions like this when you're talking to anybody in the firm? You are talking to the receptionist or you're talking to the janitor. You're asking the question, how are decisions like this made inside this firm?
I had a really good person today that asked me that, Jerry, a very skilled person. And for our Christmas party, it's going to be $55 a head, this year for the party. Every year, Jerry, it always is going up. Inflation, it's always going up there. This year, it's $55 a head. We have a staff all in between Z and I. There'll probably be 400, getting closer to 500 people there this year. There's a lot of people. And if you take 400 or 500 times 55, that's a large number. And so a person asked me today, they said, how are decisions made for you guys, for your holiday party within Thrive? How do you do that? And I said, well, my wife decides the budget for the party. That's what my wife does. She decides that, and so you got to talk to her. And I think it's so important because if you would have been pitching to me, I don't care how good the pitch is, even if I would have loved it, Jerry, I don't have the budget authority within our organization. We decided that 18 years ago that my wife would make all final decisions on that holiday party because I always want to swag it out and, spend money on things we shouldn't be buying. And Vanessa is very good with the budget. And so that's such a wise question. Ask people, who is the decision maker? How are decisions often made? Jerry, that is so important.
Well, if you ask them who the decision maker is, they're going to say, that's me.
That's me.
And so you have to come in a side door on that. How are decisions made? My view is in asking questions and probes, you start every one of them with how.
I love it.
Everyone. And once you've mastered how, you can move on to some other things like maybe what and who.
How is so good. It's so good.
Okay. So anytime you ask somebody, I'm sorry, I don't mean to correct you, but this is what I do.
Yeah.
When you go, how are decisions made inside the company, you're going to get a different answer from who is the decision maker.
Well, I'll say this. Okay? I'm not going to argue with the sales wizard. I want to make sure we get this. The reason why we're doing this podcast and this next question I have for you, Jerry, ties into this is once you've read your book, right, 3 times, okay? Once I've read the book 3 times, once you've read your own book, Jerry, 400 times, you have to make a playbook then, and you have to write down the specific questions because you just pointed out you would prefer to ask how, which is a great question. And the thing is, off the cuff is a bad way to go. The pros prepare. They got to have a playbook. So you and I are having a conversation here, but you're going to, after you've read that book and you've outlined and you've taken notes, you have to make an actual playbook, because you and I both know that the devil's in the details. Can you explain what it means for salespeople to truly make a sales playbook?
Right. Well, it's on a basic, simple theory that if you can't write it, you can't do it. Self-selling is an action plan, and writing comes first, then practice on the street. The playbook is a working document. It changes over time as your business, your products, your services, your competition all change right in front of your eyes. So after each call, make notes of what didn't work and what you would change, and schedule regular reviews of your playbook for review and upgrading, because it's, life is a continuous upgrade path here.
Right.
It becomes an archive of the best of what you do. It's also an excellent teaching tool if you're called on to train new hires. So we have found that it becomes it's not priceless, but it is very pricey in the sense that it keeps you from making as many bad moves in a live presentation.
Oh, it's so good when you take the time to do this. It's so good. Thrive Nation, take the time to make a sales book. Now, Jerry, why do you think that most people never do take the time to make their sales playbook? None of our listeners, but other people on other planets, other parallel universes, other countries, not our country, other planetary systems. They will listen to a podcast like this, and then they won't actually make the sales playbook. What's going on, Jerry? Why won't people ever take the time out to make the playbooks?
Well, they don't understand, this is my assessment, they don't understand the importance of the act of the creation and design stage. Actually, what happens is people learn a great deal about their own business in the in the act of putting down the words and what they think they say. And so what you think you say, when you write it down, it changes in front of your eyes.
Yes.
It's like studying for a play where you read the words and you say the words and do the words over and over and over on the script, and then one day they change right in front of your eyes because you go, oh, I got it. So that's what a playbook does. It allows you to get it. And when building it, you're going to eliminate puffery and develop proof statements and quantify your benefits and find the unique benefits that you sell, and design a mission statement for both your firm and the upcoming call. So, and you're going to develop each of the 7 selling moves, which you've only touched on briefly here, as explained in the book, and that is those 7 selling moves. It's really the central theme of our 3-day, really hard selling course, because we end up developing the selling book ever did in class, and then sent him home to do homework. And there was 2 or 3 hours of homework every night. Wow. In order to work on the playbook. So it's kind of a pain to do. It is time consuming, and it will tax your brain because you have to shift your thinking over to how does the buyer think about this? We know what we think about it.
Right.
How do they think about it? So, and you will eventually develop a return on investment for the buyer of your services or your products delivered. So the ROI at the higher end of selling, when you're selling larger ticket stuff, the return on investment becomes a very critical thing. We can say, look, you're going to give me $1, and I'm going to give you $10 back within 90 days. Well, that takes care of a whole lot of selling problems right there, and you can prove, if you can prove that, which we could in our case, You say, it becomes.
I want to these final two questions. I am very, very, very passionate, Shep, about this next question because I falsely believed, Jerry, for a decade previous to knowing you, from age 18 to about age 20, I guess it's age 17 to age 27, age 26, somewhere in that time frame. I believed that sales was about motivation. So I would send my team to sales conferences all the time. And I would go to these motivational conferences. Now, let me tell you the kinds of things they would teach. And when I took notes, Jerry, I'm a note taker. These are the kinds of things they would write down. They would say, everyone stand up right now and say right now, if I can conceive it, I can achieve it. And they bounce the beach ball. The music's playing. And they're saying, everybody now. And everyone's yelling. They'll have you stand up on a chair and say, I can sell. And they would talk to you about feeling it, and they would talk about aligning your vision, Chup, with your goals, and they would talk about the power of discovering the infinite knowledge that you could find by tapping into the universal knowledge.
Of course.
They would never call it God, but it became almost like a religion, Jerry. There's all this motivation.
Sure.
And I went to one conference, and I met these people, and I thought, why are all of the jackasses here? And then I thought to myself, why am I here? And then I realized I also was a jackass, and I was going to the Jackass Festival, and I kind of liked it for the first 4 or 5 times because it was a Jackass Festival. But over time, I realized all of those people were always looking for the new get-rich-quick move. Their companies weren't working, and things were going to hell because none of them could sell well. So if I'm out there saying, okay, I've been to all those conferences, I've been to all those woo-woo things, I've walked on hot calls, I've watched all the motivational, Jerry, you've seen it, all the videos. I've done trust falls with my team. I've gone to ropes courses.
Hot coals.
I'd like to get your thoughts on how salespeople can overcome their fears and the best way to train your team.
Well, it sounds to me like you have much of this ball of wax well under control. But it reminds me of the question about they asked the violin player. Violin player asked, "How do I get to Carnegie Hall?" And the answer is practice, practice, practice. And sales is the same way. And it is not a glorious motivational driven craft anymore. You can be a motivated football player. It doesn't keep you from getting your head knocked off out there. And so I feel the same way. If you know how to defend yourself with knowledge, then you can defend yourself in every circumstance that you run into, except earthquake and bombing. But you're never afraid. I was terrified for years, and I've been selling for, 150 years. Fear doesn't exist well in the face of extensive preparation. It just doesn't. And the way you work your people, and I think it's the way you're working them, which is you find a buddy and you role play every presentation. You don't wait for a perfect presentation. You just start using the skills and perfect them as you go along, because it is a lifetime skill. It isn't something you're going to do for a year and then leave. Because if you go for a year and leave and you know your business, you're going to make yourself $100,000, $150,000, and nothing makes you feel quite as good as having a nice fat bank account. And there's no time like the present to begin to do that. So do it now. And I absolutely agree with the motivational ideas, because I think people do need motivation, and particularly people who work alone. They get bummed, they get disappointed, and they get disappointed greatly in sales because they don't have a skill to close deals that are walking in their door every single day. And those people turn around and walk out. I owned a real estate brokerage in the mountains, and I trained my people. People would come in and say, well, we want to see what's for sale. And I had to train my people to say, well, come back to my office and sit down here and talk to me about that. And the first question from our side was, what would you like the real estate to do for you? And that then began to greatly narrow the inventory about what you were going to talk about.
Right.
And you just went along that whole line, and you qualified, until finally it narrowed it down to where you had, I got 2 or 3 properties that we could look at that'll do what you want.
You didn't
And
guess.
so-
You didn't guess. You asked those questions. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Well, it's this is out of my experience. I've had a half dozen trades, and some of them worked and some of them didn't. I mean, I'm a man known for his failures more than his successes. So.
Well, I think your biggest failure is agreeing to be on our podcast. That just shows a lack of judgment there. But thank you so much for making one more poor decision.
I agree.
All right,
so far this has been miserable. It's been miserable.
Okay, well, Jerry, I have a final question here for you. You've literally worked with thousands of salespeople all over the world. Why do you believe that most people just try to make things up on the fly as opposed to implementing a proven path?
I think a good part of it is laziness. I mean, there's 2 things. These are harsh words, but it has to do with laziness because it's work, and with a big W, and it's time-consuming, and people often do not even know that there is a proven path other than whatever the senior salespeople told him, who gave the new boy everything that he knew, which really wasn't very much on how to make the sale happen. Guy's been doing it for 30 years, and so he is wired. He's the number 1 guy in the company, and he is wired to accounts that he has been courting for 20 years, and so he confuses people when they say, let's watch him work. And he goes out and he says, hey, Bob, I'm here to pick up our order for this month or for this year, or here to move you over to that other place. And so when do you want to get started? Well, because the trust is already built, it looks really easy. It's very deceptive. Many people do not understand there's an underlying structure to successful human communication and persuasion. And working without a structure or a plan is a design for failure. And in this profession, there's no magic bullet in this profession, any other one that you can think of or will run into in your lifetime.
I think what you just said is so powerful. There's no magic bullet. There's a proven system. It works. It's called soft selling in a hard world. Paul, I wanted to see, and Jerry, if Paul no longer asks political gotcha questions, he no longer asks religious questions, he no longer paints our guests into a corner as one of our proud show sponsors, but he is a real entrepreneur with thousands of real customers. He has real employees. Paul, do you have a final question for the Wizard of Sales, Mr. Jerry Vass?
Well, yeah, and I apologize if this is a selfish question, but I would just like from the sales guru out there, Jerry, to do you have any advice for me? Because like I say, I'm in the wisdom business, and I read a long time ago, I can't remember the book I read it out, that if you sell somebody, you break rapport, but if you educate them, you build rapport. But then I've got to balance that side of things, the hard sell versus being not creating too much of a wisdom-based or like you said, vomiting my product or my wisdom or my knowledge all over them. What kind of advice could you give to me for that middle ground that I've got to educate them somewhat in that 40% that I speak, but I don't want to vomit all over them like you said earlier.
Well, it sounds to me like you're doing it right. I mean, there's always a balance that has to be achieved, and there's a balance between advice and persuasion and knowledge and experience and wisdom. I mean, there's some kind of a balance, and I don't know what that balance is, but I do know that it is there because, I mean, what we just did here in this podcast is that I have worked hard to balance advice and wisdom and knowledge that I have gained doing this for most of my adult life, because it takes all of it. It's kind of the whole Megillah, the whole package. So, frankly, I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. I would do what I'm doing. If you're successful doing it, I do not believe if you can afford to give away a new car with every sale and you want to do that, for God's sake, do it. But if you can't afford that, you're going to have to figure out something else. And so it's one of those things where you go, I don't like to try to change people from what they're doing now if they're successful now. I work with people who are less successful than they should be, given their talent, their education, their preparation, their time and rank, their education in the market. When they're still losing, then they can use this information to start cleaning up their act and getting successful again. Most people have been successful at least once. But they wandered off. They forgot where the center of the universe was. Where the center of the universe is communication with buyers and potential buyers. They forgot that, and they started doing other things. I mean, I've done it. I mean, I had 9 man years in a software program because I lost contact with reality, actually. I lost contact with reality. I was going on this $10 million deal that I knew that it was going to be superb and I was going to be rich for life and be able to buy myself a good used car. So it was, but I was wrong. I was wrong. And because I wandered off from the basics. So I don't think I'm the right guy to ask about what you should do differently. If you're successful doing what you're doing, for God's sake, don't change it.
Great. Thank you.
Now, Jerry, I appreciate you so much for taking the time to be on today's show. Where are you physically located? What state are you in?
I am on the beach in North Florida.
In North Florida?
Northeast Florida. 40 miles south of Jacksonville. I'm looking at the beach and the ocean and it is part of my success package, so we say. That and my partner of 25 years, Iris Heron, who actually is a co-author of the second book I wrote, which is Soft Selling for Executives. And so anyway, it's a very happy circumstance.
Is Soft Selling in a Hard World in print for the people out there that want to get a copy? I've been buying them off of Amazon. Is there a certain place you'd recommend all of our listeners to go to get a copy of that book?
No, Amazon is the place that the stuff is bought, and so that works.
Well, Jerry, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. If you see a pale male, the big white moose walking up and down the beach in Jacksonville, that's me, because we've been to Jacksonville a few times, and I am the most pale man in the history of our planet. So just look away. I don't want you to burn your corneas or anything. And when you see I like reflect light, don't I, Chup? I mean, it's truly Casperish.
Handsome.
Yeah, right. So,
what is the scream? Don't look at it.
Don't look at it. That was Jerry Vass right here on the Thrivetime Show on your podcast download. And now, without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom!